Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. It is that most wonderful time of the year. We're heading towards Christmas when Jesus comes down the chimney and leaves 3 goals in a stocking or something.
It's a miracle. It's really a sort of a miracle.
I'll be honest with you, folks. And I will admit that I did not expect Gabriel Jesus to score last night. And by that, I kind of mean singular, not tripular. Is that a word I've just invented? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that Gabriel Jesus got himself a hat-trick last night, which helped Arsenal beat Crystal Palace 3-2 in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. It was an unexpected little pre-Christmas miracle, if you want to call it that, but a very nice one, a very welcome one, it has to be said, because it has been a difficult time for him. His form has deserted him. His chances have become a bit limited. The chances that he does get when he's on the pitch, he hasn't always made the most of them, and somebody replaced his shooting boots with, I don't know, a pair of old wellies, something like that. So to see him come good again was very nice. I think you can have concerns about a player. You can be frustrated with a player. You might even think that this is a player that needs to go somewhere else to rekindle their career. But you would have to have a heart of stone not to have enjoyed not just the fact that he scored those goals, but the quality of the goals that he scored as well. The quality of the finishes that he produced were very, very impressive indeed. And hopefully this is something that he can really kick on from. But the main thing, of course, is that we're into the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. And with me to talk about the game last night, to talk about some of the individuals and who we might face in the semi-finals, we won't find that out until a bit later on tonight, I think, is Andrew Allen. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. It was nice to see Arsenal score some goals from open play. It was nice to see a player who hasn't scored from open play for, well, not very often in the last little while, grab 3 and, good to get into the semi-finals of a cup competition. You were there. How did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. I think I saw Clive saying, this was one of the most enjoyable games of the season. And I think in some respects it was kind of made that way by how unexpected that second half performance was. Because while the team was okay in the first half, I think there were plenty of people looking around going, will we get the goal that will take this to a penalty shootout, let alone will we get 2 goals to win it? There was that kind of residual mood, I guess, around the place after, the draws against Fulham and the draw against Everton. So there was, I wouldn't say it was tetchy, but, there were actually a few boos around me at half time, which was slightly ridiculous. But, I think the makeup of the crowd is slightly different for these Carabao Cup games.
Sure.
A few maybe younger people with shorter attention spans, potentially. I don't know. But it was, it was a good fun night. And I mean, you couldn't really ask for much more from the game in terms of who did what and what that might do for them. Yeah, I mean,
it felt very cup tie, The league has its own dynamic and cup ties obviously have their dynamic. And look, it won't surprise you to hear that there was reaction to the team selection online when it came out. And I'm sort of curious as to what you think about the team Mikel Arteta picked, because I saw people saying he's not taking this competition seriously, which I didn't really like. He could have picked a stronger team. Absolutely. There's no question he could have picked a stronger team from the start. Had he done that, and the performance on Saturday in the league is a bit below par, people would be saying, why'd you pick your strongest team in midweek? I think he's sort of taking it seriously, but also trying to ensure that he has as much as possible at his disposal as the season goes on. So players like Jorginho who've come in, Gabriel Jesus who came in, Raheem Sterling who came in, even Kieran Tierney to an extent, who came into the team, like we have to ensure that if those players are needed, they're not coming in completely and utterly cold. And there is every chance that we're going to need 1 or 2 or 3 of those players over the coming weeks because of the schedule that we have, So from my perspective, I completely understood the team, not least because he had the safety net of a bench with Odegaard, Saka, Saliba, Martinelli, Havertz. If he really needed to change something, he had that available to him. So I think he had to give those players an opportunity, particularly in this competition.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was very much part of the contingent of fans who, over the last couple of seasons, has maybe criticised him for not spreading the minutes around the squad more. So actually, to see him do what he's done this week, absolutely fine by me. I mean, I looked at the team and there was a bit of me which thought it'll be difficult to get past Palace with this starting lineup, but he has to hand responsibility to these fringe players at some point, and I think that's exactly what he was doing. And I think, as you said, we had the safety net on the bench, and I think, you know, you're basically saying to these guys, you've got 60 minutes to go out and win the game for me, but if you don't, you guys know what I'll be doing. I'll be switching it around until, you know, we've got a team on the pitch who can do that. I mean, he admitted afterwards that obviously conceding very, very early on made things difficult. Completely kind of switched, I think, maybe the vibe of the tie from the get-go. But I generally, I didn't have a problem with the way that we lined up. I mean, there were always going to be issues given our residing injury problems, particularly in the fullback positions. It's not ideal playing Thomas Partey at right back, and obviously having then using Kieran Timber in the centre was an unusual situation. Not something we've seen much this since he first joined. And then obviously left back was the big talking point. And in a weird way, I don't think anyone could begrudge Kieran Tierney the opportunity that he was given. And I have to say that I really felt like he took that opportunity for a bloke who hadn't played football for 6 months. He was full of energy, full of willing. And look, Arteta also knew that the moment he made the decision to put him in the team, he was going to have to amend how that role was played. And that's exactly what we did.
I did wonder about that, because I felt in the first half like, you know, I think if you ask Thomas Partey to do a job at right back, he can do a job at right back. I don't really think in any kind of setup it suits the team particularly well with him there. I think it's better, for example, if you've got William Saliba inside him and Bukayo Saka and maybe Martin Odegaard ahead of him. I think it is better. But when it's not that, when it's Raheem Sterling and Ethan Nwaneri and it's Kieran Timber not playing out of position, but like you say, not playing in a position that we have seen him in a great deal. Like yesterday, what I felt was an issue in the first half, before we talk about obviously the goal that we conceded, was the fact that Partey, for me, was playing too close to Kieran Timber. They seem to be on each other's toes. Now, that might have been a consequence of having Tierney on the left-hand side, where typically the left-back will come more infield. But obviously that's not his game, and that's not what he's asked to do, and that's not what he did yesterday. So to give you that bit of control, maybe you bring Partey inside a bit more. But I felt really like it happened a little bit recently with Declan Rice, where he was dropping just a bit too close to his centre halves. You're picking up and taking like a 1 yard pass. That's no good to anybody. It was a bit like that in the first half, where I felt Sterling wasn't great on the right. Partey wasn't great at right back. Nwaneri wasn't great in the middle, but then I think I felt a bit for him, because this is an opportunity for a 17-year-old, and I felt like maybe those two experienced guys could have played the game a little differently, or could. I'm not saying they're there to look after him, but I think there is a bit of responsibility on senior players when you're playing a specific role, not to leave the 17-year-old isolated, which he was too many times, because Sterling was dropping inside and there was no width from right back, no width from the right wing, and Nwaneri, when he got it, had little choice but to come back and sort of recirculate the ball.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to what you were saying about Timber and Partey, I mean, it felt to me like with Tierney pushed out wide, that Arteta had said to them, look, one of you two is going to need to invert when we're on the ball, just to add that extra missing body in midfield. But it didn't seem like a clear delineation of responsibilities, right? One would go, then maybe the other one would go. Then, as you say, we ended up with bunching, and things got crowded, and it wasn't ideal. I thought, you know, Nwaneri was, I mean, unlucky, I guess, to get hooked at half time. But, you know, after a slightly invisible cameo performance off the bench against Everton, I sensed there was something in the back of his mind about making sure he was involved in the game. And, you know, there were periods in that first half where he came so deep to get the ball, and then found himself kind of surrounded by players, and then would go backwards and backwards and backwards, keeping the ball moving, completely neat and tidy, not doing anything particularly wrong. But when you looked at where he was getting the ball and the type of player he is and what you know he can do, it just felt like the completely wrong part of the pitch for him to be on the ball. And I sense maybe Arteta got that vibe, which is why he decided to have someone who maybe sort of, in Ødegaard didn't feel the need to necessarily go looking for the ball for the sake of looking for the ball. But, generally, it was all a bit untidy. But, I mean, we had so much of the ball, didn't we? I mean, I think it was it 70% possession in total over the course of the game? But, I mean, really, after that opening goal by Palace, we were completely dominant, really.
Yeah, without really creating too much. It was 72% possession in the first half. And I suppose that's where the worry was in that first half was, I think, beyond the Trossard shot that Sterling set up and the free kick, which was well taken by Sterling. It's a good save by Henderson. There wasn't really any sort of cutting edge, which was, after what we've seen against Fulham and what we've seen against Everton, a bit of a problem. We'll come back to how that was solved and how we improved things in the second half. But we've got to talk about the goal that we conceded, which I think Arteta called it naive. I'm not even sure that's the right word for it. I think it's just a mistake by Kiwior. He stoops for a header, misses the header, which you can't do as a central defender. You're going to get punished if that happens. And I think what compounded the error, if you like, was the fact that he did get back to Nketiah, but Nketiah was too strong for him. I think if Saliba or if Gabriel makes that mistake and gets themselves back in a position to make a tackle, that more often than not, they are going to make that tackle. I don't think Kiwior was quite strong enough in that moment. I mean, it really didn't look good for him, that goal.
No, it was a real mess. What I would say is that at least he then didn't get himself sent off, because once I saw Nketiah kind of moving away from him, I think there must have been a temptation in his mind to lunge in and try and get the ball. And actually Nketiah was really, really clever with the touch that he took that actually gave him just a little extra space and then the angle to try and beat Raya. I'm not blaming Raya in any way, shape or form, but I think if that play plays out later in the game, I think Raya's probably further up the pitch in the first place. Maybe a bit more of a sweeper situation.
Yeah, maybe
whereas
so,
actually, when
yeah.
you find him, you see the ball comes over the top, it takes one bounce and he's already having to backpedal into his 6-yard box, at which point, he's not on his toes, he's not able to close the gap and anything like that. So, it wasn't great from Kiwior. I was kind of surprised that he made that type of mistake, having had a recent run of games. You could almost expect it from someone coming in completely cold, but he's actually played quite a lot of football recently. So,
and played pretty well, I think.
Yeah. And look, he was fine after that. I didn't see I don't really think he did anything wrong for the rest of the game after that, which in itself is a positive for him to take.
Yeah, I mean, there was a long ball a couple of minutes after the goal, which he let bounce, which worried me a little bit. And I was just a bit concerned that, you make a mistake like that in the opening stages of a game and you make another little error. Not much came of that, but it's not what you should do as a central defender. I was a bit worried that, what if he crumbles a bit here? But, I have to say, over the course of the rest of the game, he did absolutely fine. Yeah,
I mean, I was surprised maybe also at Palace's passivity. Is that a word? Passiveness. They didn't really maybe press that situation as much as they might have. I mean, Nketiah is a big, physical, imposing bloke, and really that was the only opportunity he was given to go one-on-one with Kiwior like that, I feel. They just kind of seemed quite happy to sit back and try and soak up the pressure after that goal. And I think that actually probably annoyed Oliver Glasner quite a bit, because he seemed sort of frustrated because they then didn't go into a full press. They didn't quite know what they would do. It was almost like they were surprised to be ahead, and they weren't sure whether to push for a second or just sit back, because, it was a bit of a catch-22 for them. But yeah, I mean, look, with Kiwior, he is... He's one of these guys, I think, who we just have to accept. Obviously, is not going to be at the level of Saliba and Gabriel. He's not that player. But you have to have players who can come in and play games of football and know their place in the pecking order. And I guess, this is where we're at. We've always had these guys, whether it's a Scalacci or a Senderos or a Segan, or, they're important squad players that are able to take up minutes in games where you can't play your best players all the time. And sometimes you while you don't want that drop-off to happen, there is always inevitably a drop-off. We've got two of the best centre-backs in the world playing for us. Although this was kind of the mistake that you'd expect from a sort of Sunday league team.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a bit casual. And look, I think he's made another mistake this season as well. You know, in the Bournemouth game away from home, it was a bad back pass. So look, I get why people might be a little down on him, but he is there to back up and provide cover for Gabriel, basically. And as long as Gabriel is fit, then we don't have an issue. And, you know, if it's not Kiwior, it's going to be another Kiwior. As long as you have Gabriel, it's going to be another Kiwior. I mean, it could have been Calafiori, right? If he were fit, it could be Calafiori in that position too. So there is an argument to be made, possibly, that Kiwior is the third choice left centre-back, and that maybe has to come into the discussion a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't spend too much time on Kiwior, but I think the man is available. He's fit. He's available. And as far as I'm concerned, in this squad, that's a big tick next to your name, right? Like, there's very few injury problems with this guy so far, touch wood. And you know, you can't blame Kiwior for not being Calafiori if Calafiori's out injured all the time.
Exactly.
So, there you go.
So look, we get to half-time. We're 1-0 down. It has been a bit of a struggle. There are a few grumbles, as you say. And Mikel Arteta decides to make not one but two changes. So Martin Odegaard comes on for Nwaneri. And as I said, I felt a little bit sorry for Nwaneri in the sense that, you know, when Odegaard came on, he had Jurriën Timber outside him, in inverted commas, proper right back to play with. But I also think the quality of Martin Odegaard at this moment in time is obvious and should be obvious to everybody. And I think pretty much straight away you could see that he was making a big difference. Saliba at the back, Timber on the right. It did make a big difference to how we played and what we were producing in the opening minutes of that second half. It demonstrated that, you know, the manager got it right. It was a lot better. There was a good chance, wasn't there, for Sterling at the back post, a good ball across from Kieran Tierney. We don't usually see our left back in that position, but he got the ball across really well. I think Sterling should score there. If not the first one, and I do think he should score the first one, definitely the second one.
Yeah, I mean, how many goals have we seen Sterling score like that for Manchester City? The ball across the box, and he's making that late darting run to the middle of the goal to just try and tap it in. I felt a bit sorry for him because actually I thought Sterling was all right last night. You know, like, he was busy again. He was trying to make things happen. He obviously had that free kick, which he felt confident enough to take, and he was unlucky it got saved. And he got into the right position, knowing that Tierney was going to play that low ball. You know, on another day, the ball goes in. I think Henderson makes a pretty decent save there, and then the ball comes back to him so quickly. I actually thought from my position behind the goal that I didn't realise maybe the ball had hit the bar with the way he'd hit it. But, you know, he sort of grazes the bar, and then, you suddenly think, oh, it's not going to be his night there. But yeah, it should have been put away, really. I think a player in form probably does do that. But there was the fact that he got there and was, you know, in the right position and the ball stayed in and kept going. And I think there was another moment afterwards where Trossard then had a shot. So it just... that we had basically a 30-second to 60-second period where the crowd got up for it. Yeah, the crowd suddenly felt involved, having been pretty muted and outsung by the very big away support. And you suddenly thought, okay, here we go. You know, we're in this now. Let's see what we can do. And we really just turned the screw over the next few minutes. Kept the ball, kept recycling it, kept pushing and probing, and then. I mean, it was just a fantastic pass by Odegaard. I mean, it is for Jesus.
Yeah, superb ball. I mean, that not quite a reverse pass, but the way it cut the Palace midfield apart for the run of Jesus. It is a good run from Jesus. Gets it beyond the defender. I have to say, like, the pass was unbelievable. The touch from Jesus, really nice. The finish for a guy who's got one goal in his last 34 games. The finesse was very impressive. You know, I guess the temptation is in that situation to really just put your foot through the ball and kind of hope for the best. But man, what a great finish. And obviously it opened up something in him. It unlocked something in him from then on.
Yeah, I think Alan Smith described it as a brave finish, which I think 100% that's the case. As he takes it and it's going over the goalkeeper, I don't know how much Gabriel Jesus thinks that's going in. Like, no. I think there's a moment in his face where he's looking at the ball and he's like, the whole world just stops for him. And he's like, oh my God, is that going in? I don't know, because he suddenly almost chases after it as if it might hit the post. But it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I think the whole crowd suddenly was like, oh, holy shit. Like,
remember this guy? Remember him?
Yeah. I mean, it was... There was no sign of that in the first half. Not no sign of it, but there was no inkling that Gabriel Jesus was about to produce a finish like that. I mean, it wasn't until after the game I found out it's over a year since he scored at the Emirates, which is just crazy. So that was lovely. But yeah, 100%, it completely unlocked a new player after that. I mean... Even before the second goal, there was a chance, wasn't there, the near post, little turn and a flicked finish, which again Henderson did pretty well to sort of like parry away with his arm, and you were just like, okay, yeah, this guy, we can work with this guy, and you notice suddenly just the players were looking for him more. I think listening to Jesus talk after the game about Ødegaard, and having said to Ødegaard, I know you, you know me. You know where I want the ball. I'm going to make those runs. Just look for me. I mean, obviously that became very, very clear. I think the other thing that was really, really interesting, and the reference to Issa Hussein, the attacking coach,
right?
Jesus made in the comments afterwards, where he said, "I just have to keep my mind clear and strong. Work like I work with Issa every day." And he told me, "Look, Gabby, your quality. You just need to be calm, and then you'll score." That's what I did today. This isn't a guy that gets a lot of press. Obviously you hear a lot about Nikola Jova. We see, Carlos Cuesta and Miguel Molina and Albert Swedenberg. But Issa Hussein came in, I think before last season, and obviously he's been charged with trying to get Jesus up to scratch. So nice for him to get a kind of name check. And yeah, from there, he didn't really look back.
It's a good job he's only getting a name check after he scored goals, because if
18 months he's been working on this.
Exactly. Come on, man. Step it up, please. Step it up. But you know what? I think there's something intangible in finishing, in confidence in front of goal. Like, I couldn't help but think, like the second goal, again, lovely play down the right-hand side. It's a great pass from Bukayo Saka. In the Premier League, that goal doesn't count, I don't think, because Jesus is marginally offside. But what I really liked about the second goal, beyond the fact that it wasn't ruled out for offside, is looking at Jesus take a moment to look at the keeper, to see where the keeper is, how he's set, and what kind of finish he's going to produce. Because a couple of weeks ago, or last week when we played Monaco, remember the long ball over the top from Kiwior, and Jesus is so focused on the ball and the ball not getting away from him, he doesn't even look up. He doesn't look at the keeper whatsoever. And I think, in this sort of barren spell that he has had, there's been like a lack of conviction. That was a lack of conviction against Monaco. He was so terrified of the ball squirting away from him, he didn't look where the keeper was and just sort of hit it and hope for the best. On this occasion, whether it's to do with just the time he had or the fact that the goal has lifted a weight off his shoulders, he had that look, and I think the finish really had a lot of conviction, which is maybe a sign of confidence returning. And I know you can't measure it in any significant way, but I think you can see how that first goal probably took a weight off his shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he found making the run and then getting rewarded for it by the ball being made and him being able to take the shot in the first place was definitely something that kind of triggered something in his mind. If I keep making these runs, they'll keep finding me and then I'll have more opportunities. I mean, he did actually reference in the post-game comments the misses against Monaco, which I think is very, like, it says a lot about Jesus that he carries around those misses with him. from game to game. You know, he's thinking about it. He overthinks, and every time that he comes out and does a post-game press conference or media whatever appearance, he's very, very reflective on his game and perceptions of him, and almost a little bit too candid and honest and sort of heartfelt. He's not a robot like you kind of assume Haaland to be. His confidence is everything for him. It just kind of, it's even in his, you know, the look on his face. You know, he has this kind of very sort of slightly sad, sort of teary-eyed demeanor about him. But yeah, I mean, once he was played through this time, I think you're right. He took a very small look and then just absolutely arrowed it into the corner of the net. No doubt about that. I mean, there was no sort of side foot. It was laces through the ball, hit it as hard as you can. And yeah, I mean, the place erupted when that went in. It really, really just went mad. And everyone did that double take again of, holy shit, who was that? Yeah, I was just really, really happy for him at that point. And then at that point, I was watching him on the pitch in the few minutes after the second goal, and he was a player who sensed there was a hat-trick on for him. You know, he was prowling around. He was pointing about where he wanted the ball. That was a guy who suddenly was like, okay, this is my game.
Yeah. I don't think anybody had Gabriel Jesus hat-trick on their pre-game bingo card by any means. No. But I loved the third goal as well. Like, it's a goal we haven't seen a great deal of from Arsenal, where obviously the game state has played a part. Palace are 2-1 down. Excuse me. They're pushing to try and get an equaliser. Therefore, they leave a little bit of space. But it's like, how well can we exploit that space? And I think the pass from Odegaard is fantastic. But like you say, that's Gabriel Jesus prowling, waiting for an opportunity. The ball breaks. He's running from his own half, so he can't be offside, goes all the way through. And again, this is one of those where you're going, okay, huge opportunity. We've seen maybe him overthink chances like this before.
Yeah, Theo Walcott-itis.
Yeah, just that bit where you're like, well, he's definitely going to go on and score here. And then as he's running through, he's probably thinking of all the ways he can miss rather than how he's going to score, you know? So I was really, really pleased that, again, he did that thing where he took a touch, he looked up, he saw where the keeper was, and there was no question about the finish. Again, it wasn't tame, it wasn't half-hearted. It was like, this is going in the back of the fucking net.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And I mean, I know we talk about Odegaard all the time, but that pass was just superb. But it 100% helps knowing you've got a fast guy up there who's willing to make that run. Yeah. Not identical, but not too dissimilar from United attacking last season very late on, and us winning the ball and Vieira playing it through to Jesus. Just that, knowing that there's someone who's willing to stretch the defence late in the game, wants to go and kill it, desperately, actually showing a bit of killer instinct. It's maybe something I've thought we'd see more of from Martinelli, but weirdly we haven't been able to get Martinelli into those sort of one-on-one situations that often. 100% the best thing about last night was watching us create 3 very nicely worked goals from open play, but in a style of football that basically speaks to the strengths of the players that we have. A guy who's able to play slide rule passes, Saka with brilliant nifty feet before a lovely pass, and an attacker who plays on the shoulder of defenders, doing what he's supposed to do. We've been missing it for so long because there's really nobody else in the squad with that profile. It was just it really harked back to those first few months of his time at the club.
Exactly. I mean, how much do you think? I mean, he's a striker, he's a forward, his job is to score goals. Like you say, I think there have been times where he has been maybe a little bit too candid about the strengths and weaknesses of his game, and it becomes a stick to beat somebody with when they say, scoring goals is not my strong point, right? When you're a striker, when you're a forward, even if you can see kind of what he's talking about, what he, I think, was saying in that moment was there are more things to his game that he can contribute and help the team in different ways, not just by scoring goals. Like, he's not an out-and-out goal scorer. He's not just going to stay in one position and try and score like a big beanpole striker, right? I think that's what he was trying to say. But obviously, it comes out differently and it's perceived differently and it's reported differently, and that becomes baggage, I think. And when you have scored only one goal in 34 games, there must be confidence issues. There must be, like, you must feel like, A, you're letting everybody down, you're letting yourself down. You're in the team or you're in the squad, you're at the club to score goals and help the team win games, and you're not doing that. And like you say, they're human. He is, a human being who I think over the last 9 months, 12 months has suffered a real downturn in form, but also a downturn in his own confidence and self-belief. So while a hat-trick in the Carabao Cup is no guarantee that he's going to go on and start scoring goals for fun in the Premier League, as one of the big positives from last night, as something that we, ideally, if you were going into this game and saying, how would you like to win it? It would be let's see a couple of goals from Gabriel Jesus, and maybe Sterling gets a goal, and then you have these guys who are beginning to feel a bit more part of it, and who maybe you can have a bit more trust and faith in. So from that perspective, I think the big positive, beyond the fact that we're in the semi-final of a cup competition, is that Jesus can hopefully shed some of that baggage, restore a little bit of confidence, and next time he comes on to play, whether he starts on Saturday or whether he comes on late in the game, will be feeling like, okay, I know I can do this again.
Yeah, 100%. I think, look, he's... We'll see what happens on Saturday, but I don't imagine he's going to start the game. So it's how does he cope with that now? How does he cope with going back to the bench? Can he carry this confidence with him? Will it just dissipate in a couple of training sessions? Will he be, back to normal? I say normal being not amazing by next week. I mean, Arteta said afterwards, consistency is everything now. He's got to be able to prove that he can do that. I certainly think that it should help. If he comes off the bench on Saturday, at least he knows he's going up against some defenders who he's already got the better of this week. Yeah, right?
True.
So that's massive for him. Too often I felt like maybe the narrative has got that way around Jesus, where other defenders are probably looking at him and thinking, if we get a tackle in on him early, or we do this, or make life difficult for him, his shoulders are going to drop, his head's going to drop, he's not going to be on it, and we've won the mental battle, right? So that's the challenge for him, is to be able to kind of puff his chest out and be able to do this week in, week out. I think, there were some soft factors here that maybe played into the way last night played out. He said his daughter was one of the mascots. And obviously his wife has just announced that she's having a second baby, so he kept grabbing the ball to do that kind of pregnancy celebration. So little things that kind of maybe mentally play into, I'm having a good week, I'm going to go and score a couple of goals for the Arsenal tonight, that type of thing. So
he's hit the back of the net a couple of times, obviously, of late. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, well done. So we'll see. I suspect he'll be on the bench at the weekend. Kai Havertz will be up front, and we'll be calling on him for the last 20 minutes and hoping that he can, well, maybe we won't need it, but maybe we will. We'll see.
Maybe we will. I mean, and look, the reality is, while people don't want to hear the message that we've got to get more out of the players that we have, because there's a lot of focus and talk about the transfer market, that is what the manager has to work with over the coming weeks. It's not going to be January 1st. There isn't going to be a shiny new guy in the door on January 1st. So for us to get Gabriel Jesus back, or get a Gabriel Jesus back who can be effective, can only be a good thing. And I was very pleased for him, because I've always thought the quality was there. It's been a really tough period for him after injuries, and I think the injuries have played a big part. So very nice to see him get those goals. It gave us a nice comfortable cushion until we conceded a goal with about 10 minutes to go, thereabouts. I saw that header and was like, I did not know Eddie Nketiah could do that. I mean, it's a fucking great header. It really is. It's a good ball in. He kind of runs off Timber, runs across Saliba. Kiwior is backpedaling and can't quite get there. But I think the quality of the header from Eddie is really, really impressive.
Yeah, I think catches Raya completely, doesn't it? Because it just bang straight off him, and it's in the back of the net before you even realise what's happened. I mean, fair play to him. I mean, I think there was maybe a few of us who were looking at him going to Palace and thinking, oh, if he starts scoring goals, everyone's going to be quite agitated at Arsenal. But it hasn't really gone that way for him in a team that's been sort of maybe struggling to get itself together this year. But that was a very timely reminder for A, Arsenal fans, and B, Palace fans, that there is a quality striker there. You just need to give him the right service. Yeah, I think he got a really nice reception when he came on, and in some respects, I guess, having won the game, Arsenal fans can quietly go, thanks very much, well done, I'm glad you enjoyed that, don't ever do that again, we'd rather not add you to the list of Adebayor, Robin Van Persie.
Let's
keep him a thorn in our side.
Keep him in the Eduardo box. Remember, was it exactly. Eduardo who returned? We won a game 5-1 and everyone cheered Eduardo when he scored. Yeah, exactly. So we'll have a bit of that, and I'm glad, hopefully Eddie got it out of his system ahead of the weekend, because obviously we've got to go back there, or we've got to go to Selhurst Park on Saturday. So
I don't know whether the TV cameras picked up on it, but Arteta was trying to get Big Gabby on the pitch before that ball went in the back of the net. Right. So Gabriel was sort of standing there on the touchline, ready to come on. Arteta obviously sensed that, okay, now's the time to lock the game down. And actually what happened was, as he was doing that, the ball went in the back of the net, and suddenly it became a little bit more urgent to get him on. So maybe it looked like he was reacting to it going 3-2, but actually he was willing to make that substitution at 3-1, but didn't get the chance. So, I mean, it was we managed to do enough to get over the line at the end there. It was a little bit tetchy. I thought Raya did really, really well. He was very, very decisive with some of the crosses that came into the box, and particularly that final corner, I think he just went, I'm going to deal with this, just came out. After going through a massive crowd of people and just punched it away. And that is kind of what we bought him for. Really.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it didn't feel like we were under a great deal of threat, to be honest, in the final stages. Sometimes the game goes 3-2 with 10 minutes to go, a bit of injury time. You're like, oh, I don't like this. But it didn't feel quite like that. Maybe because it's a cup game as well, because there is, the chance to redeem yourself. It would have been a penalty shootout if Palace had scored. There was a penalty shootout at 90 minutes. It is a bit odd, isn't it, that they're having a penalty shootout at 90 minutes without extra time, but still insisting on two legged semi-finals.
I mean, do you want to know when those games fall?
Yes, please, because I meant to look it up this morning before I wrote the blog.
It's not ideal. So we play Brighton on the 4th of January in the league, and then the week after, or the game after, we've got Manchester United in the FA Cup third round. So we've got a Carabao Cup first leg squeeze between Brighton and Manchester United, which could easily be Manchester United if they beat Spurs tonight.
Oh, God.
Then we play... I mean, we have it's a pretty ridiculous run. We've got Brighton, Carabao Cup first leg, United in the Cup, then Spurs at home, Villa at home, Dinamo Zagreb at home, Wolves and Girona away, and then City at home, and then Carabao Cup second leg. So City at home will be the game before the second leg of the Carabao Cup.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's when you look at it and you think, okay, so it's either going to be 2 legs against Newcastle, 2 legs against Spurs, 2 legs against Liverpool or United in that run, suddenly you go, oh, God, I'm tired already.
Have you any... I mean, does that not sort of bring us back to that point at the start where that kind of schedule and that kind of relentlessness, that these 2 games are now going to add to our schedule, and fingers crossed with Champions League we can finish in that top 8, because imagine having another 2 games in Europe on top of that as well. The need to be able to use as much of your squad as possible is so obvious,
Yeah.
It's clear there are some players and some starting 11s which are much stronger than others, but I think you have to slightly take a risk with games like last night by using the depth of your squad, not just because you want to get those players back, but because you're able at least to rest Gabriel for most of the game. Saliba for 45 minutes. Saka for, a good hour and a bit. He played a bit towards the end. Odegaard got a rest of 45 minutes. And actually, I don't think that the 45 minutes Odegaard got were anything other than really, really useful, after a difficult sort of a performance last week. So all of those things, when you look at that, schedule, it just makes it so vital that he can call on as many players as possible. I mean, do you have any preference at all for the semi-finals?
I never like it when you end up playing a team over and over and over again. So I mean, if Manchester United beat Spurs, I'd prefer to avoid United, because I always sense that you're not going to get the better of them over the course of 5 games, and I'd quite like to dump them out the FA Cup. So,
Newcastle then?
I guess Newcastle, maybe. I mean, I feel like we've got some beef with them and some unfinished business. 2 1-0 defeats at their place has really annoyed me, and they'll be so desperate for a trophy that I quite like the idea of knocking them out in the semi-final and taking that smile off Howe's face.
And obviously we want Tottenham to go out of this competition this evening. They're playing Manchester United. So, I mean, a couple of semi-finals against Tottenham in the League Cup is a little bit of Arsenal heritage.
Yeah,
if your mind goes back that far.
Yeah, unfortunately it does go all the way back to 1990 and 1993.
Oh, well.
They were. Well, one of them I was very, very young, and it was a very, very painful thing to lose to Spurs and to Gascoigne and Lineker, and for the ball to go through Seaman's hands. The other one, well, it was a much nicer occasion. Tony Adams and the Donkey won the derby, wasn't it? A long, long time ago that now.
Yes. Well, I mean, there was the 1987, the League Cup in 1987, of course, when Arsenal were beat Tottenham 2-1 at their place. So
was there another League Cup semi-final against Spurs? Maybe it wasn't semi-final. I can't remember. I feel like there was one where Ali Adier scored in extra time against them, and maybe we won 3-1 to make it at some point. But
the only other Spurs one I can remember is Flamini scoring a couple at their place.
Yeah. I mean, after thousands and thousands of matches in my lifetime, they're all starting to blur into one at this point. It's just disappointing.
Well, yeah, look, welcome to my world. My world. I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about Kieran Tierney as well. Obviously, his first start in, a year and a half, I think they said, for Arsenal was his first start for quite a while. I enjoyed the moment when Arteta literally pushed him onto the pitch and told him to sit down. It was very funny, actually. It looked like it was a bit, what's going on here? But it was basically, sit down on the pitch so we can get the substitutions made. I enjoyed that. Yeah,
I was... I think the whole stadium had this moment where like, oh no, he's not done his hamstring again. Surely, please God, because that was obviously the absolute worst case scenario. Here's a guy who actually does pretty well for an hour. You've got the January window coming up, and you don't want him getting injured again. That was very funny. But thankfully, he, once he took his place straight on the bench, you realised everything was probably all right. I have to say, I also really, really enjoyed the timing of David Ornstein's exclusive.
I was going to ask you about that as well. I mean, look, within 10 minutes of the final whistle, there's a tweet from David Ornstein saying that Arsenal are not going to extend Kieran Tierney's contract. He'll stay until the end of the year at the latest. It's just like, oh, come on, give the guy. I mean, maybe you have to wonder where that story has come from.
Well, I do wonder whether it was Edu messaging Jason Ito and going, here's David Ornstein's number if you want to flog Kieran Tierney, do it now. Or
Kieran Tierney's agents going, well, he's got a start under his belt. He's back in the shop window a little bit. And what better way to do it than an Orn bomb? I particularly liked in the press conference afterwards, I think it was James Benge. It was James Benge who asked Mikel Arteta about, what could this mean for Kieran Tierney going forward? And then by the time he's asked that question, that Ornstein stuff is out there in the ether, So it was a bit strange, I thought.
Yeah, a bit of an odd one. Look, there's absolutely no surprise, is there? I mean, I don't think anybody in the world thought that Arsenal were about to extend Kieran Tierney's contract by another year, or that we were that desperate to hold on to him. everybody's known what page we've been on for quite some time. If he hadn't got injured in the summer, he'd have left last summer. He's a lovely guy. He's been fantastic for the club. Unfortunately, he's had loads and loads of injuries. It hasn't gone the way he would have wanted. The game has evolved, or at least Arsenal's playing style has evolved, beyond him. He's recognised that. The club's recognised that. But you can't fault the fella for the effort and what he's tried to do for Arsenal. And I think it was really heartwarming seeing a player like that come back and get one last chance to play at the Emirates. And I think that's probably what it was, especially in a red and white shirt anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. You never know when he might be needed. You never know what circumstances will throw up this talk of clubs being interested in January, which obviously makes sense. If he's not going to be renewed, then there is the ability for clubs to, try and do a knockdown deal with Arsenal, whether it's a Premier League club. I've seen, I think, Sam Dean reporting that Celtic are also interested in taking him back, which I'm sure
I think it
would
all
be
comes down to his wages, really. I'm sure he'd love to go back to Celtic. It's just whether or not he fancies taking a huge pay cut for a few years. That's heart versus head stuff for him.
Yeah.
It's funny because you almost forget that he played a season in La Liga and was playing Champions League football and was at the European Championship. I mean, this is a quality player who maybe he doesn't fit us, but he 100% could go on and play for quite a long time for someone else. He's not even old.
No, he's only 27.
27. Yeah. So, there's for a fullback, there's potentially, look, I just watched Ashley Young give Gabriel Martinelli a schooling at the weekend, and Ashley Young's about 50. So we'll see how Kieran Tierney's hamstrings hold up, but there's definitely a long road ahead of him.
Well, the secret to Ashley Young's longevity is a diet of bird shit. So if Kieran Tierney wants to just chow down on some guano on a regular basis, he'll strengthen up his hamstrings and make him...
It's just a disgusting image.
I'm sorry about that. But anyway, look, a good night, and we are through to the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, and obviously attention will turn this weekend to our game against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, where hopefully we can produce a bit more of the same. Before you go, I did want to ask you about the re-emergence of the European Super League, this unified Super League thing, which has reared its ugly head again. There don't appear to be too many clubs interested in this. Real Madrid and Barcelona seem to be the driving forces behind it for financial reasons above anything else. It just seems mad to me that Real Madrid, who have this incredibly prestigious record in the Champions League, the all-time record winners of this competition for years and years and years, and they were so focused, weren't they, on that 10th one before it happened, are willing to just sort of blow it all off. And I know that it's finances and everything else, but it just feels like like every box you could tick that makes it unviable and unworkable. Oh, we'll have a new streaming platform for fans. Oh, great, another streaming platform. That's just what we all need. A competition that, has got what? No history, no prestige, look, I'm not a huge fan of what's happened to the Champions League and this new league format or anything like it, but what do you make of this new proposal from the European Super League and the marketing agency employed by Real Madrid and Barcelona to try and make it happen?
Yeah, from what I can tell, looking at the format of the competition that they're proposing, it's basically the same setup as what's already there now. So they've gone from creating or proposing a kind of closed shop situation, which I think really appealed to a lot of the American owners in the Premier League, where, relegation wouldn't be a factor, to creating a league based on meritocracy, like the Champions League setup and the Europa League and all the other different tiers. But they're basically asking everybody to leave UEFA and just go and join this other competition over here, but presumably one where the rules and regulations are set by a new entity, of which Real Madrid are a driving factor. And what is it about Real Madrid that makes me trust them? Not much.
Yeah.
I'm not kind of looking at Real Madrid and thinking, oh, you're the guys who didn't go to the Ballon d'Or recently because you didn't win. You threw your toys out of the pram. I trust you to run the competition. So you want to set up this competition where, God, nah, I'm not having it. Obviously, from a legal standpoint, what they've managed to get to a situation where the European courts will allow them effectively to set this thing up. So it doesn't necessarily, previously I think it wasn't even allowed to be set up, was it, as an entity? But now they reckon UEFA will probably call their bluff and say, go ahead, launch your league. Let's see how many teams you get to play in it. And that ultimately is the big question. If they can't persuade 95 teams to come and join this competition, well, then everyone will just keep doing what they're doing, because you can't set up a four-tiered competition or a European Super League with one team in it.
And what happens, if it goes under? Where do these clubs then stand?
Yeah,
are they allowed back in? Have they burned their bridges with UEFA, with the other clubs, with the European football associations?
It feels to me like this is going to be a constant chipping away at UEFA, that they're hoping over a long period of time they'll be able to kind of somehow undermine them to the extent that some clubs come back on board. But at the moment, it's a bit like Brexit. Like, trying to undo that knot is so difficult that for clubs staring at it, you're probably thinking, God, it's a lot of effort. Like the bureaucracy of untying yourself from UEFA to then go and set up over here, when all the players are still wanting to play for national teams who are associated with UEFA, and how difficult UEFA could make life for players and teams potentially. It for me at the moment, it just feels like a lot of hot air. And I don't think President Perez at Real Madrid is going to be around to see this happen. He's getting on a bit, and I think it may well die with him. Well,
we'll see. It feels like the last thing football needs right now is yet another competition, yet another sort of dose on the schedule for these players, when you've got the Club World Cup and all of these things going on.
Well, 100%. And also, look, this is the first year of this new Champions League format, which has been introduced because the big clubs wanted more games and they wanted more, big glamour games. They've kind of got what they wanted, to just present back what's already now happening. It seems a very strange one. But, this whole idea was born out of a boardroom in the first place, and not out of some kind of organic competitive need. It's about money ultimately,
of course.
And I understand Real Madrid being very uppity about the fact that PSG and Manchester City are owned by nation states, and that they don't like that. And as an Arsenal fan, I think I can firmly say I don't like it either, but I'm not sure that I trust Real Madrid more.
No, and plus all this stuff about the bump about it being like, we want to give the football back to the fans and make it affordable and make it, but basically you're just asking fans to pay more for what they already get, which doesn't make it more affordable. It's that whole idea of like when Sky had all the football and they said, well, for competitive reasons we've got to give some of the games elsewhere, so then you need another subscription and another subscription, and the sort of veil of competitiveness basically just empties people's wallets.
Yeah, it'll be the idea of a streaming service that shows football, a singular streaming service that shows football, is fine. But obviously the moment you start dividing it up from competition to competition, it just doesn't work. If the Premier League launches a streaming competition over here, and then whatever the Champions League is over here and the Unify League over here, it makes things very, very complicated. Ultimately, the consumer is always going to be out of pocket somehow. There is a lot of inefficiency on that front at the moment. I think particularly supporters in the UK get a very, very bad deal with the fact that you need 4 subscriptions to watch 52% of the games or something.
Yeah.
And I will always have a bee in my bonnet about that. But, potentially we'll see the 3 p.m. blackout close at some point. But we'll see.
All right. Well, look, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Andrew, for being with us. Season's greetings to you and yours. We're getting to that point now. So
yeah, very much so. What are we? Only 6 days out from Christmas. So, yeah, have a good one.
Thank you very much indeed to Andrew. You can find him in all the usual social media places. He's on Blue Sky at aalansport.arseblog.com. Just search at aalansport and you will find him on Blue Sky. Right, that is just about that for this particular episode. Obviously, we've got a game against Crystal Palace coming up on Saturday evening. We will look ahead to that in our preview podcast, which you can get over on Patreon. And if you're looking for a last-minute gift for somebody for Christmas, you can gift somebody a year's membership of our Patreon, which gives you access to everything that we do over there throughout the season and the off-season. Lots of exclusive content for you, which also goes a long way to support all the things that we do on Arseblog, which are available for free and always have been available for free. You'll find a link in the show notes. You can sign up on a monthly basis or annually. You get a discount, I think, if you sign up for an annual subscription as well. If you want to go month by month and you only have to commit to a month, it's $6. And like I said, it supports everything that we do on Arseblog. So if you fancy a bit of that, it's patreon.com/Arseblog or follow the link in the show notes. Right, I'm going to leave it there. We will have an Arsecast Extra for you, by the way, on Sunday. We're going a bit early this week because of the week that's in it. There's a lot to get through for people, obviously, with the holiday season coming in. So we'll have the Arsecast Extra for you on Sunday. For now, though, take it easy, folks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, as always. And we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye. Welcome back to Holy God FM, and that last song was from Sabrina Carpenter. And you know who else was a carpenter? That's right, Joseph was a carpenter. And you'll all remember that Christmas when Mary and Joseph were looking for somewhere to stay. But they could not find anywhere to lay their heads, not even a Premier Inn or a travel lodge, because a stag party had booked up all the rooms. In the end, Mary gave birth to our Lord Gabriel Jesus in a manger, which is highly, highly unsanitary and not recommended at all. But much like Sabrina, Joseph was a carpenter, and while he worked, hammering and sawing, he liked to listen to music. Did he like to listen to Christmas music? Well, no. There was no such thing as Christmas music back then. And to be fair, all the Christmas songs are basically shite. Apart from this one, which comes from my favourite band. They're called Paddington Was a Cunt, and the song is entitled Santa Is a Hoe. Ho, ho, ho! Ho, ho, ho! You're a fucking old Santa! Short but very, very sweet. Merry Christmas to you all.